Welcome to Aflame for Christ, homilies to set your heart on fire with love for Jesus Christ. My name is Father Joseph Gill, a priest of the Diocese of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and you've joined us on this Easter Sunday. So my uncle is one of those tinfoil hat UFO chasers from California. He really kind of fits all the stereotypes. He believes that aliens can read his mind and that trees can speak to us, like stuff like that. In fact, his Facebook biography says that he is, quote, a revolutionary shaman wizard spirit troublemaker. Okay, all right. But I must admit that I believe something even crazier than he has ever believed, that a man rose from the dead. Just think for a moment how crazy that sounds, right? If I were to tell you that I saw George Washington eating at Bill's Diner, you'd think I've lost it. And yet here I am to claim that a man who was brutally executed is now completely alive, forever and ever. That he walked again on this earth, he ate and drank, his tomb is empty, his body is glorified in heaven, and that now this divine man should be followed as Lord and God. That seems like total foolishness, right? But imagine how the early disciples felt. When Mary Magdalene told the apostles she had seen the empty tomb, Peter did something completely undignified. He ran. That would have been very inappropriate action for a grown man to do, but he didn't care. He needed to know the truth. And once he had encountered the risen Lord, he was so convinced that he spent the remainder of his life sharing that good news with others. Now imagine the response he got, right, as he preaches the resurrection, like in the first reading today. Most people probably discounted Peter as a raving lunatic, but those with faith to hear recognized in Peter's words the only hope that really mattered, that Jesus Christ is risen, so our life and our eternity now belong to him who's conquered death. But paradoxically, despite the fact that it may sound crazy, the resurrection actually is the most reasonable belief of all. We know for a fact that the tomb is empty. There's been no reputable archaeologist in history who's ever claimed to find the body of Jesus. We know that the resurrected Christ, according to testimonies, was seen by over 500 people at once. And many of these eyewitnesses died as martyrs, proclaiming that Jesus is alive. So even though the world may think us crazy, it's actually reasonable to believe in the resurrection. And I'm willing to bet my life that he is risen. The great thinker Blaise Pascal said that if you believe Jesus is Lord and you're wrong, there's nothing to lose. But if you're right, there's everything to gain. Conversely, if you don't believe in Jesus and Jesus doesn't exist, well, then nothing happens, right? But if we refuse to believe in him and he does exist, then we lose everything. So really, the rational choice is to believe in Jesus Christ. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain. After all, what is real craziness? Believing that Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, or believing that money, success, and pleasure leads to happiness? Which one is crazier? To give your life to Christ in the hopes of an eternity with him, or to give your life to this world, which will pass away when you die? I'd rather give my life away to God than possess this entire fallen world. St. Paul says the same thing in our scriptures, right? Our life is hidden with Christ in heaven, so we must seek the things that are above. And boy, does that look crazy to this world. It was a cold winter's day in Granada, Spain in the 1500s when an itinerant preacher by the name of St. John of Avila came into town. He stood on a small platform in the town square and began to tell the townspeople of the good news of Jesus Christ. So out of curiosity or boredom, a small crowd began to gather and then grow. And when he got to the part about Jesus Christ having risen from the dead and how our lives belong to him for eternity, a wealthy man from the crowd was so moved by this realization that he climbed the platform with the saint and began to throw his money out into the crowd. He's crying out, "I will no longer live for this world. God alone," publicly telling everyone his sins and crying aloud for God's mercy. Well, the authorities caught wind of this and they couldn't let this crazy man continue to make a scene, so they quickly took him to the local mental asylum. But he still continued even there to rave about how he repented of his sins and believes in God. A week passed, and the man was still overwhelmed with tears and bursts of laughter. So the doctors summoned the man responsible, Father John, and he met with this formerly wealthy man, now poor and disheveled, and they spoke for a while. And finally, Father John came out and said, "This man is not crazy. He just simply believes with his whole heart. We would all do well to do the same." So they released the man, who then reused the remainder of his wealth to open a hospital and serve the poor in town. And both men became saints, St. John of Avila, the preacher, and St. John of God, the great servant of the poor. My friends, I pray that you all may be filled with the same holy madness. Love makes us do things that the rest of the world considers crazy, like forgiving our enemies, foregoing the sports game to worship Christ at Sunday Mass, staying faithful to our spouse, loving our difficult parents, hoping for a heaven we cannot yet see. And the craziest one of all, living and dying for a man who has risen from the dead. So yes, the wisdom of heaven may seem like foolishness to this world. The truth of the resurrection seems like madness to scoffers. But I pray that this kind of holy madness overtakes us all. After all, what would be truly crazy is to choose this passing world over eternity.